Welcome to today's live chat, and today I'm going to continue my series on Jack the Ripper. Now, I normally say that I upload... Oh, sorry, I've got a problem here. I've got some music coming out. I'm going to have to put a stop to the music, which I forgot to silence. There we go, sorry. I normally say that I upload every Tuesday and every Friday, and every Tuesday and every Friday I try to do one of my, shall we say, documentary type films. On the Fridays, I put the documentaries up, and on the Tuesdays, I do the shorter videos. That's the way I've been doing it now, and maybe at the end of the year, I've got lots of stuff still unused. I'll have a clearance, and then I'll be on every night or more frequently as it happens. Hello, Colin. So anyway, I'll continue this Jack the Ripper theme. Today I did something on the same lines actually. I went out to Limehouse. For those of you who know London or East London, I spent the day wandering around there. And to me, you find this in 19th century largely. Industrial architecture. For example, there's the second largest urban railway viaduct in the world, and I filmed it last year just because I thought it was really attractive, and then I realized where I was. This is a viaduct done by George Stephenson, who also did the bridge in Newcastle. And when I find this stuff, I find this super attractive. And walking around this area here, such as Spitalfields and this territory of sort of where Jack the Ripper terrorized, but these things can't still be found, and when they're preserved, not everything has been destroyed. And I also, as I said in the last video, the place where the first Jack the Ripper murder happened, that of Polly Nichols, where they built this fantastic station, which was opened, I think it only opened 2021, I think it opened, but it really is quite amazing. But the wall that was next to the place, the stable where her body was found, went, and so that was a part of London that was lost. What I thought I'd do here, actually, I'm going to talk about the inquest into the first victim. And the point, I think, of that is to actually so that people can understand what actually happened to her. But at the same time, we know the information largely. This was published in the press at the time, and it shows that this, even though it was a really poor area, but it was very well advanced in some areas. So that's it. So the body, which was found, it took about 2 hours before it ended up in the mortuary, which was in Old Montague Street, and that allowed the doctor, Dr. Llewellyn. Now, he's appeared in various films. He appeared in the Jack the Ripper with Michael Caine, for example, and they even sort of tried to suggest maybe that he might be one of the suspects who was actually doing that. Now, what he found, though, was that it was he who discovered if that's the right way of putting it, he was the one who discovered the wounds. Now, part of the problem for people who were homeless is they had to wear their clothes. The clothes that they possessed had to be worn on them. So, I did read once a description of the time that women could be having 10 or 12 petticoats or dresses under them. Now, you can imagine in the winter, maybe they'd be glad of it, but in the summer, it wouldn't have been very pleasant. Now, I understand that the 31st of August, 1888, the end of August 1888 wasn't very nice anyway, so that maybe that wasn't so much of a problem. But this also meant that the wounds that the lady had were hidden. So the people who discovered the body, who were perhaps unlikely to start lifting up her petticoats or what have you, just to find out what the injuries were. This was discovered at the by the in the mortuary. And so this, what she had was she had wounds both in her back and in her front, two wounds of which reached her vertebral column, and these were thought to be done after death. And her vagina had been stabbed twice, and so, but there were lots of mutilations, including one of up to 3 inches, 10 centimeters, on her left side, and her bowels had actually come out of the body, and they were able to tell that all the wounds were carried out by the same knife, and some were as deep as 20 centimeters long. So that means it had to be a pretty long knife to actually do something like that. And it wasn't, I would suggest, there was not the sort of knife that could be easily hidden on the body. So this showed a trade of somebody who it's hard for me to say what, but I mean, if somebody made shoes, for example, or worked with leather, or maybe certain types of woodworking or something like that. And now Dr. Llewellyn, he thought that the murderer possessed some kind of anatomical knowledge, even though no organs were missing. And this in itself now led to all sorts of conspiracies then starting up. And this has continued, the idea of that Jack the Ripper was a doctor to this day. Now, he said, even though other doctors disagreed with him, and I'm in no position, of course, to judge based on the information, and even if I had a complete set of knowledge, I wouldn't be able to actually judge that one with the other. So he thought, sorry, the sound is coming out of here once more, and that's, I don't know. Sorry, I thought I turned this off, and it's coming on by itself, and so there we go. I'll turn that there so I can see better if it comes on again. So the where am I? I'm in London at the moment. So no, anyway, good. So hello. So the he built 5 minutes to actually do this. And what he thought was that the victim faced the attacker, he held a hand across her mouth, and then he cut her throat. So stepping sort of around her. And not only that, death was instantaneous. And so in the wounds, that he did everything to her afterwards. And this was clearly the way he killed the other victims as well. The victims knew nothing of it. They were killed absolutely immediately. Now, the poverty meant that she had no identification on her whatsoever, except for one thing. One of her petticoats was had the mark of the Lambeth workhouse where she'd been, and this allowed the police to go there and trace who she was, and so from that they able to identify her that evening. So they knew relatively quickly who the victim was. Now, when a person dies like this, there's an inquest, and the inquest is to establish the cause of death. And in this case, the inquest was to be held the very next day, which was a Saturday, the 1st of September. No, the other thing now, that was a Friday morning. And the other two deaths, which I mentioned a couple of days ago, they also happened the day after a bank holiday. So there's a little pattern developing here. And so the inquests were normally held in pubs. And so what they do is they would rent a room in the pub and have the inquest there. Now, the Middlesex coroner, this was then part of Middlesex, the boundaries changed later, Win Edwin Baxter decided that this was not the right sort of environment to hold something so serious. So he didn't do it, but they had it in a place called the Working Lads Institute. Now, the Working Lads Institute still exists on Whitechapel Road, and the building's still there. The use of the building's changed. Now, the Working Lads Institute was a sort of a charitable sort of institution. It was meant to be a place where young gentlemen, as from 13 years up, could actually go for further education, or they could stay there. It was designed to give them a trade and stop them falling into the vices such as alcohol and living on the streets, but also these really bad vices of attending music halls and going to the theatre. And I would agree with that one. You don't want to end up going to music halls because nothing good will happen to you. And on day one, they heard from witnesses. And the first witness to testify was the father, who had said that he hadn't seen his daughter for many years, although... The daughter, he testified that his daughter had been separated from her husband for many years, and he hadn't seen her since the previous Easter, but he believed that she had no enemies. The policeman who found the body also testified, and he said that he saw that she was dead only when he got up really close to her. There was only one light in the entire street. Now, I've actually done videos what it looks like today, and I did it at night. Well, at night, it was the early morning. And but you can see, I mean, it's quite brightly lit. And somebody actually said this, well, how is it possible that you couldn't tell that there was a body lying there? Well, and this seems really suspicious. But I would say that it isn't suspicious. I mean, just go out somewhere where there isn't a light shining and there's no lights at all, and see how well you can actually see your way around. It's not, you might have seen a black lump or something like that, or a dark lump, I should say, on the ground. And he thought the dark lump was a bit of tarpaulin, and then he thought, oh, that might come in handy. And so to cover his wagon with, because he was in the removals business, he worked for a removals company, and therefore that's why he probably thought he'd take it. But so I don't honestly think that is all that suspicious. In any case, before she left, Polly Nichols said that she would find a client because she was wearing a jolly bonnet. Now I'm quoting her words there. The bonnet itself was lying at the side, close to her left hand. So the Ripper didn't think much of the bonnet. He didn't take it. Not only that, we know that he probably didn't actually take anything from any of his victims. As far as can be ascertained, he might have taken something from the last one, but it seems though he didn't actually take anything from any of them. It is once said that he took part of the body parts. Anyway, so third witness on the first day was Dr. Llewellyn, and his whole testimony was put in the Times on the Monday, the 3rd of September, 1888. And he said, the state that she was in, 5 of her teeth were missing, and that was due to the way she actually lived. She had laceration of the tongue. Again, that's probably, I don't know how that would have caused what would have caused that, but I presume that was to do with the way she lived. However, having said that, there was damage to her body that was caused by the assailant. So there was a bruise along her lower jaw, right side of her face. It might have been caused by a blow from a fist or pressure from the thumb. Presumably, that happened at the time the assailant actually killed her. He did note, however, that the amount of blood was quite small. No blood found on the breast, on the body, or even on the clothes. So, and the injuries were in the lower part of the abdomen. And so that, I think, is that shows sort of the mentality of the killer. So I think one can start guessing that this is some kind of psychopath who hates women. On day 2, the police inspector John Spratling, he gave testimony, and he said that about the police who the beat. Those days, in fact, until comparatively recently, policemen used to have what was called a beat. They would walk around, and it was they had to do a certain circle within a certain time, and it was done at a relatively leisurely pace. So that would allow them to talk to people, intervene in things, or even give assistance to other colleagues if necessary. The police would summon other assistants by blowing their whistles. So policemen had whistles, and we see that in other cases, for example, with the other murders that take place, they've got the policemen blowing the whistles, trying to get assistance. And so it's in this case, though, two policemen actually did one. There was a policeman on the beat, and there was a policeman who was sent there by the people who actually found the body. Now, on that day, Charles Cross, who was for many people a suspect, he followed the policeman on the stand, and he testified that he'd found the body whilst he was going to work, and he'd initially assumed the body to be a tarpaulin. He then heard somebody else in the street, Robert Paul, and he'd motioned to him, saying, "Come and have a look at this woman. If she's breathing, but I think she's dead." But as they were late for work, they both decided they'd tell the first policeman. Why didn't either of them see the wounds to her neck? And again, Cross said that Bucks Row, Durward Street today, was poorly illuminated. Now, the husband of Polly Nichols testified on that day as well, and he said he hadn't seen his wife around 3 years, so it's less time than what her father had actually said. She'd left him because of her alcoholism, and he didn't know where she'd been after he'd left him. Two women who'd known Polly in the years following the separation actually testified as well. Emily Holland said that she'd lived with her in the summer of 1888 and thought she was a quiet woman, and she kept herself to herself. And then she said that she hadn't seen her for around 10 days prior to seeing her by chance on Osborne Street. Osborne Street is Brick Lane is now Osborne Street, so at the southern end. And another lady, Mary Ann Monk, said that she'd seen Nichols and Polly Nichols entering the pub in New Kent Road at around 1900 hours an evening prior to her murder. And they both said that they didn't know how she actually, where she got her money from, how she made a living, so they didn't realize that she was prostituting herself to get extra cash. On the third day of the inquest, the final day, there were 8 witnesses, and there were people who lived in the neighborhood of where the body was found. And this, incidentally, in the Michael Caine film, you see him he says, "Oh, you," or something like that, and you get lots of people looking out of the window where in Bucks Row. In this case, Emma Green, she was a widow. She lived with 3 children, and she lived in the house which is bordered onto where the garage was, or the stable was, that Polly Nichols was found. And she said that she noticed nothing special that night, although she did note that from time to time rowdy individuals, to use her words, sometimes walked along the street. She also noted that all the people who lived in that street were hard-working individuals. And I refer you to the poverty maps, which I mentioned earlier, and I looked up this one, and Bucks Row is not one of those. It's a poor area, but it's not. It doesn't come into the worst categories of poverty there. So, not that I'm suggesting, of course, that extremely poor people are bad in any way, but it was a place where working people who maybe had their own homes, even if it weren't, obviously they were paying rent for them. There was the mortuary assistant, or the keeper of the mortuary, made he testified, and he said that he hadn't noticed that any of the clothes were cut before he had to cut them from the body. So it seems in a way is that the killer had done, he'd managed to kill her in a very clean cut sort of way. Anyway, so after hearing this, then the coroner decided that he'd postpone the inquest until the 22nd of September. Now, that is quite unusual now, because the next killing took place on the 8th of September in Hanbury Street. That was Annie Chapman, and it was clearly the same murderer who had done both. So, so this sort of changed things for when the final day of the inquest was coming about. I would like to say something about that. I've got a quote here from the coroner. Why did Jack the Ripper? Why was he able to escape so easily? And it's this. Baxter said, it seems astonishing that the culprit should have escaped detection, for surely there must have been marks of blood about his person. If, however, blood was principally on his hands, the presence of so many slaughterhouses in the neighborhood would make the frequenters of this spot familiar with blood-stained clothes and hands, and his appearance might in that way have failed to attract attention while he passed from Bucks Row in the twilight into Whitechapel Road and was lost in the morning's market traffic. And that's quote by the coroner directly at the time. And I think this is really important, because often it's said, well, okay, there must have been blood on his body. First of all, because of the way he manipulated the victim. If the victim's killed by a movement from behind, the blood is going to go in that direction. It's going to spurt. But if he's holding a knife, by the time the knife has moved, the blood comes this way and the knife's out this way, and the hand is further away. And we already know that the knife is 20 centimeters long. So he wouldn't necessarily be covered in blood. Now, in the Michael Caine film, they said this happened because they got the victim into a carriage, which is absolutely nonsensical. But that explained why. Another thing they said is that the person had to be rich because the clothes would have to be thrown out. That was in the Michael Caine film. But again, I mean, there's so many people worked in these slaughterhouses, and the slaughterhouses were in this area. And I think people who work in slaughterhouses today probably don't get much blood on them because of the way it's done today. But then I would imagine they got quite a lot of blood on them. I would imagine, I don't know. Maybe somebody who knows more about these things can actually say. Right, so that was it, really. Now, the thing was that for our purposes, I suppose, looking at this from so many years later, I assume, as do most people, and certain people who know far more about these things than I do, that there were 5 victims, and both Emma Smith and Martha Taberham, who I talked about earlier, were not victims of the Ripper. It needs to be pointed out that in September 1888, it was believed that they were, and even the coroner actually said that the similarity of the injuries in the murders of the 2 previous women is considerable. There are bruises about the face in both cases. The head is nearly severed from the body in both cases, and there are other dreadful injuries in both cases. And those injuries, again, have in each case been performed with anatomical knowledge. I suggest to you as a possibility that these 2 women may have been murdered by the same man with the same object. Now, that is the coroner, and of course, he would have had lots of experience in such things. So, having said that, his experience, he then went on to say that he actually suggested that the murder weapon, though, was significantly different in the first 2 cases, and as in the case 3 and 4, which I haven't talked about the 4th one yet. Anyway, so the jury didn't need much time to think about this. They said that the willful murder against some person or persons unknown. And now the strange thing is now that these murders, though, all happened within a, say, around 350 meter radius. You can walk from one place to the other in no time at all, and walking in those days from one of the places to the other would have been even quicker. Good. Sorry, I hope I made that clear, because sometimes when I don't write things down properly, I get a bit confused. And but the coroner noted the similarities between the 4 killings, but he said that it's the two, the third one and the fourth one, which were possibly done by the same person, but with not number 1 and number 2. I hope I made that clear. I don't think I did, though. Right, sorry. So I'll come on to the questions that you've actually asked here now. So hello to everybody's there. So I know I'm in London, and Gary points out that Cockneys are the salt of the earth. Hello, Annie. And now Gary met loads of Londoners. I thought that Gary was a Londoner, and everyone said they knew the craze. I wonder if 60 years prior, everyone claimed to know Jack the Ripper. Yes, that is true. Everybody knows the craze. Now, there's somebody in the building where I am right now claimed that he knew them as well. So the craze, they must have led quite a life. I seem to have met absolutely everyone. It's strange, actually. Every time you meet somebody who was in the the Soviet Army, Red Army, they all end up in Berlin. I've never met anyone who ended up anywhere else. Anyway. Colin asks, how are you? Well, I think that's a general. How is one so sure that the murderer was a man and not a woman? If the victims were killed instantly, then they wouldn't be able to put much of a struggle, so the attacker wouldn't have to be strong. Yes, that's true, because let's face it, if any of us comes face to face with, I don't know, a famous boxer, name me one, Muhammad Ali, if you get your first hit in, then you're probably going to win. It's like this, it's the surprise. And so the thing is this, I think it was a man, most likely, because I think the evidence of the strength, I mean, women can be pretty strong as well, but it's we've got to, in all cases, what these ladies had to do to get money, they had to be approached by men, and they had to feel comfortable. Now, I'm not certain if they were approached by a woman that they would feel the same level of comfort. I'm just suggesting that. I don't actually know, but maybe there is something like Jill the Ripper. I've heard that one mentioned before. I think there's a book on that subject as well. I don't know. It is, of course, clear that women would be less frightened of another woman approaching or passing her by. I imagine that somebody with the experience that Polly Nichols must have had being on the streets, and we know that she'd had at least 3 customers that night because of the because she said herself she'd had 3 times she'd earned her DOS money, and 3 times she'd gone into the pub and spent it. So we know that. So I think that they probably get a little bit of street sense, and this one's all right, this one isn't, and that is something where this Aaron Kosminski just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's completely illogical, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not a criminal profile or anything. If I know anything, I'm good with documents, but I don't know, maybe not with other things of this nature. Anyway, Nina's right. I wonder if some of these women had mental conditions. Yeah, well, I mean, what is a mental condition? I mean, possibly we all have them. T. Norbert the Ripper, then yes. So Gary writes, if his name would be Norbert the Ripper, then there wouldn't be so many books on the subject. And Gary says he's from a rural Essex location and not a Londoner. Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that one. Okay, good. So there we have it. I hope that was all right, that one, because I do what I can. But we're talking about things such as this is a bit out of my depth, actually, talking about bodies and things of this nature. It's not I think I'm relatively good at things like documents and dates and geography, but when it comes to the body and wounds and injuries. And bear in mind, I'm not a criminal profiler or anything like that. I can make judgments based on the conditions that existed in the time, and I can maybe bring things from the past alive today through my limited knowledge of the area. I mean, I know it like a tourist does. I never lived in the East End as such, but yeah. Now, Colin's made a really good point here. He says the following: street sense is difficult if someone is drunk. Probably is, yes. Again, that's well and truly outside of my knowledge. Yeah, I don't know. I think that would have made it far easier. Once more, I think, though, I've got to actually insist on this point, is that it's the condition that these poor women found themselves in, whereby gin was the only escape. The gin was the alcohol of choice because it was the cheapest, and it did the job quickest, and got the people drunk quickest. So therefore, that was it's this escapism. The only way they could escape from their poverty was through gin, and that is in the horror, because it's something which has got worse and worse and worse. People through alcohol are just getting worse and worse. She actually, Colin, she hadn't spent 2 lots, she spent 3 lots of her DOS money on drink. And I've seen it written that a shot of gin was about the same price as I think it was a quarter of a loaf of bread or something. These people will be living on things such as bread, which may be 4 weeks old and already moldy, but that was because of the bread that was thrown away. Things of this nature that nowadays, which we probably couldn't eat anyway, but because of the way they lived, they'd built up the antibodies or whatever it is inside the body to actually they could eat things without being as ill as we would be. Same way as this, for example, I'm told that in India the locals can eat the food there sold on the streets, but we can't. Because we don't have the appropriate defense mechanisms in our body. So I'm told. Okay, well, thanks very much for watching. Oh, sorry, Gary writes, at that time in history, all the middle-class women were poisoning their husbands. Yeah, probably. Poisoning is I read in I, Claudius, the book, not in the film, but in the book there was a description of... Now, the book is a novel, it's I, Claudius. It's not true, it needs to be pointed out. But there's a description of how people were actually use of poisons. And some of these poisons, such as belladonna and things, they think, well, it doesn't really... It's not that poisonous. And also these things often you see in films. Like today, I watched something on the making of the film Live and Let Die, one of my favourite films. But there's a venomous snake supposed to be, and the snake bites the person, and the person dies immediately, and it just doesn't happen that way. Even with the most venomous snake in the world, the poison doesn't. It takes about 45 minutes for an inland taipan bite to actually kill you, and that's the quickest one on that there is. And gin can be used as an antiseptic, but I don't think actually treating your body with antiseptics is necessarily a good idea. Gary's made the point that 18th century women boiled flypaper in tea. What would they do that for? Boiled flypaper. Why does flypaper make a tea? Okay, well, thanks very much. I'll tell you what I did today before dinner. Okay, I went to Limehouse. I also uploaded 2 films recently. One I uploaded yesterday. I have done a video on Carmen Mora, who was a prisoner in Ravensbrück, but also she was a capo in a way. Well, not quite, but she was a functional prisoner. And she was sort of previously been an amateur spy and really very, very odd story anyway, so you'll yeah, I'll offer that before long. I finished a video on Ulrich Sporleder, who was he was a pastor in Marienburg, today Malbork, and he was in the German resistance. And I also started writing, well, start putting it together actually, a video on an American who was a Hitler apologist and would appear in the United States saying how great Hitler was, and he was used by the Nazis also as a figurehead. Anyway, I've started that one. I sort of translated it from German into English interview today, and anyway, that will go up before long. But anyway, so that's the end of the day. So thank you very much for watching. I'll try and do something tomorrow. I might do the next Jack the Ripper one, but can I see that is the Hanbury Street killing? Yeah. Nina mentions about mental conditions. Women could be literally abandoned on the streets to their own fate. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes, and Colin says that's my Limehouse Declaration. Yes, but nobody else will get that joke. Limehouse Declaration 1981, if I remember rightly. So bye everybody. Thank you for being here, and I hope that was interesting. I hope it wasn't too disjointed, by the way, because I feel sometimes because I wrote some quick notes down, but I sometimes don't even understand what I've written myself. Thanks, Annie. Thanks, Nina. Is it? I've forgotten Neela, and Craig. Gary, thanks everybody else as well who was here. Have a good night. I'm going to go to bed now because I get up very early in the morning. I get up at 3:30 in the morning, and then I do things. So thanks. Bye for now, and maybe until tomorrow. Bye. Night.